have on is Jeff Haupt, who is the CEO of Red Card Athletics. Red Card currently works with 70 different universities and professional teams across the country, providing a variety of different services, which we're going to dive deep into today. Jeff is a graduate from Wisconsin School of Business with degrees in management and marketing. I'm really excited to have him on today. I've worked with Red Card on several different occasions, at several places I've been in the past. Definitely a very valuable service. And again, this year I'm kind of bringing on more brands, supplement companies, places to just kind of give us an insight of what they do, how did it start, what is kind of their origin story, and how is that now transitioning into providing our practitioners, whether it's dietitians or chef RDs in this case as well, and providing them a service that's going to be able to streamline, make things more efficient, and provide a high quality product that helps the athletes. So, Jeff, appreciate you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
So as we start off with every podcast, can you please tell the audience, what is your roots? Who is Jeff?
It's a good question. I've been thinking about it for the last few days when you sent me that question. So, well, I was born and raised in a little town called Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which has been made famous from the making a murderer and from or infamous, and from the Manitowoc Minute that Charlie Barron's does. So somehow it's gotten put on the map. But I grew up on the shores of Lake Michigan, which most people wouldn't say this, but it kind of makes you have a love of the water and kind of a beach kid. It's growing up being able to go on the beach and hang out and get out on the, play in the waves and stuff, that stuff. And I went to school then at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and I participated in a club sport, the ski racing. So it's, doing all these things that I, love, but in Wisconsin, not really in the places where they're, much bigger and better. So I left Wisconsin, and my brother and I, it's a long story for another day, but we licensed the rights to The Onion, as I said, America's finest news source, the publication. This is back in the 90s for Boulder and Denver, Colorado. So we moved out there, and I would have loved to have been a ski bum, but at the same time, it kind of afforded me to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So, you can spend your weeks in Boulder and then head up into the mountains on the weekends and, play in the backcountry skiing and all that sort of stuff. And just, my love for the outdoors continued to grow. In 2000, probably the biggest, change in my life, something you deal with a lot. I tore my ACL skiing in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it sort of, changed the trajectory of working out, trying to stay fit, eating right. And because it seems like if you have an injury like that, you're kind of destined to work out for life, or you're going to not feel so good for the rest of your life. So
it's definitely a long rehab process. I mean, it's way better than it used to be, right? We're getting people back sometimes 6 months. I'll see more so probably like 9 to 10 months, 12 months, depending on the severity. But yeah, depending on the individual and their willpower, it could be a long, treacherous process.
Yeah. So, sort of an odd story that I don't tell too much, but I got into cycling. So it was the one thing I could do with a torn ACL. And I'm obviously a huge Packer fan because, grow up just south of Green Bay. It's kind of what happens. And I remember watching Favre in an interview after a game, and he was just started sobbing. I was like, God, I wonder what it's like to not be able to control your emotions like that, and after just giving your heart and soul to something. So I decided I was going to get it, way into cycling, and started doing these, bigger rides. And I remember I signed up for the Vail 100 and 100-mile mountain bike race, 13,000 feet of climbing. So I completed that, and the week after that, I did a double century through the mountains from Glenwood Springs to Colorado Springs in a day. And with a few other guys, and definitely got that feeling that Favre had of like you lose all control of your emotions after giving yourself, putting that much effort into something. So I loved doing all that stuff, and got into some cycling, racing, and stuff just in and around Colorado. And then the opportunity came that Onion wanted to buy the rights back from us, and they needed help in Wisconsin, the headquartered office. So I decided to move back here to Madison, Wisconsin, where I am now. My wife is a PA in spine, So she works with athletes, but due to the laws, I never find out that she works with the athletes. And usually unfortunately, she works with the ones that they come in and you hear them as a recruit, and also you never hear about them again. And years later, you're like, I wonder what happened to this person. She's kind of smiles, like, well, I guess I know what happened to them now. um,
Doesn't hurt to
but
have a wife that's a PA in your back pocket.
it's great for, it's great for getting medical help and stuff, but she takes the laws extremely seriously. So there's never names or never tells me who or any of that stuff unless I'm.
I mean, I think it just, especially for like medical practitioners, like as hard, it's kind of like you're talking about your cycling. As hard as you have to work to get your credentialing, you do
Yeah.
not want to be in a position where you have to either get it suspended or have to figure out how to get the credentialing back. Like it was already a long road just to get to that point.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And Colorado wasn't a great place for mid-level practitioners, for PAs, because they're so saturated with doctors. So being back here was going to be a lot better. So she started working at UW Health and Spine, and I was working with the Onion, and then just decided I kind of wanted to get out of the media world, but still wanted to, continue working, um, in and around the college space. And a friend of mine had started a company called the Flatiron Meal Plan in Boulder. They were a client of ours with the Onion, and decided to see if we could give that a shot in Madison. And in 2010, started Red Card which was an off-campus meal plan for parents and students. But getting back to Madison, though, I love the water. We currently live on Lake Mendota, so getting out and foiling is the big thing I love doing now behind the boat, and surfing with the foil board.
What is that? I never heard of that foiling.
It's like a hydrofoil that's underneath a surfboard. So you get up and literally, like, you can rise up on the foil board, and the foil is like an airplane wing, and it cuts through the water. So it literally feels like you're flying.
Oh, wow.
And you can let go of the rope and you can surf the wave. You don't need much of a wave to surf.
It's like the in between of parasailing where you're very high up actually in the sky, and now you're like floating up off the water.
You're just kind of floating. You can see it on the ocean. A lot of people, it's gaining a lot of traction when people surfing, because you can surf like a bump. You don't even need a bigger wave. And you're seeing people doing stand up with it and kiting with them. And doing that and stand up paddleboarding, those are, kind of the two loves, just being out on the lake. So it's kind of what fills my time.
Yeah, that was the one thing when we moved from Florida, and we've gone back on a couple occasions to see friends, and my uncle lived there. But there's just something about being next to the water when you're there for a long period of time and you move away from the water. Just like I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's majestic, it's just relaxing, the sound. It could be a lot of those different things, but there's just something about being around water, being around the ocean, that's just different than being more inland. Luckily, where we are now, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you have some great spots up there in Michigan, but we're only an hour and a half from the Panhandle now, so it's like we're not super far away, and we can still do it, but we're also not like as close as we used to be. So it's kind of like the perfect world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I've always lived next to something natural, whether the mountains or the water, so it'd be hard to give that up.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the Onion, you mentioned media. I'm very curious, just coming from a previous company that was heavily on like social media as kind of a mainstay of their company. How have you seen that shift and change during your time working in that space to what it is now? And I guess how do people use that as maybe an advantage to their business in this case?
Well, I mean, it's been, I don't feel that old, but obviously I am. But I started when I was in college. The internet sort of came into existence, as did emailing. And so, starting the Onion was only in print at the time, and then became a website, and then became social media, and then became more social media, and kept kind of growing and growing, and and everything kept changing as well. So at first, reaching students or being around students, all about Facebook. In fact, you had to be a student even to be on Facebook. You had to use your school's email address to get an account. And then it went to Instagram, and then it went to I guess here we are at TikTok, but Snapchat was in there, and plenty of other things. And and now we're looking at AI, is sort of I liken me graduating when the internet coming on board is like these graduates now, it's going to be AI, but um, it's hard to keep up on. In some ways, it's been great for, in the media world, you can have your own voice separate of other things. It's kind of an unfiltered voice. There's pros and cons to that. I think for the athletes, you can build a brand like you never have been able to, if you go back to years when the media pegged you who you were, and that was that. There was no trying to change perception.
Yep.
And
You were pigeonholed almost. It's like they're this person. And it's like, well, if all the media agree, it's like, what are you going to do? And it's like now, yeah, the freedom is just so expansive,
yeah,
which is a challenge too, because it's just like now you can't do anything because everyone knows about it in 5 seconds. So, and
correct.
everyone's going to jump on that bandwagon to either praise you or ridicule you.
Yeah, you gotta have thicker skin, that's for sure. But there's no hiding. But at the same time, you can tell your own story.
Yeah, you
And
can actually be truly authentic, which I think in a lot of cases not everyone has always been able to do that.
yeah, when I take a non-formal poll amongst friends, I always ask, would you rather go to school when we did, where there were no cameras and social media and everything, or would you have wanted that? And everyone usually says, I'd rather have gone then, when no one knew if I snuck out of a bar and the back door, who I went with, where I went. It's all trackable these days.
I 100% agree. I think it's just, I mean, even though you just look at your phone, the amount of hours we spend on a device versus communicating, talking, having conversations,
Yeah.
even to a certain extent, it's almost becoming like a lost art. There's people now in generations that don't know how to talk to each other. Like they're just stuck behind an email or a phone, and
Yeah.
like to even get into a conversation, even though this is virtual, but even like when you get to face, it's just so awkward, and they just don't know how to do it. And it's like, are
Yeah.
we really moving into a direction where we can't even like talk to each other without 2 seconds later having to look down at your phone?
Yeah. Well, you look career wise, like look at my wife, she's a practitioner like you are. And there's things to change about technology, takes advantage of things. It's amazing they couldn't figure out how to do home health care or telecare prior to the pandemic. And the pandemic hit 3 days later, they got telecare, which is fascinating to me. But um, technology doesn't necessarily change things for her. She's still a practitioner. And then, about spine, yes, X-rays and all that stuff, much easier, much more technology there. But, for me, the internet barely existed, email barely existed, let alone a mobile phone, let alone a computer, and the computing power was necessary. And, here I am in mobile payments. Like that was even a thought of, you
Wow,
know,
how is a 360?
yeah, just, technology, someone graduating today, and it's like, where are things going? And it's like you can't even necessarily imagine it.
Yeah, it's super challenging. So going back, I think you said 2010, right? Is when Red Card came around.
Yeah, 2010.
Okay, so was it basically this journey you've kind of come on? You had the ACL injury, you met that person in Boulder, Colorado, like you kind of saw an opportunity there. I guess what is the origin story behind why you wanted to start Red Card in the first place and how you got that going?
So the what so the red card part of it, the parents and students, it really came down to a why I got that going was I knew the college market well at the time. I deeply understood it and how to reach students. And I was leaving the Onion, and I literally made a list of things that I liked and don't like, and I put it in my pocket. When an emotion hit me, I'd write it down and under the pros or cons. And over time, as the list kept going, it seemed to be more things that I maybe didn't want that kind of led toward this. So one of them, I didn't want a huge staff. Two, I didn't want it to be about the number of hours that I was working just on me. So like for you were saying earlier before he jumps on here, the number of hours you had to work in previous jobs and stuff. And for us, we essentially make money anytime there's a transaction. So there's a benefit. I can be sleeping, someone buys some food, and we make a little bit of money. So that was a nice thing as well. So
Yes.
the list,
You can make money any hours of the day with minimal effort. I think that's everybody's
yeah,
ultimate goal nowadays. If you can get to that point, I don't want to say it's not. It's obviously a lot of work for what you're putting into it, but if you have some
yeah,
passive revenue streams in that respect, that definitely helps lifestyle and goals of retirement early.
yeah. So so that's how Red Card got going. Decided, hey, I think this all seems to hit the list that I have. But um, what ultimately happened with Red Card Athletics, that happened but completely by accident.
Mm.
And as I've mentioned, my wife is a PA. They hired another PA who played volleyball at Wisconsin. And one of her friends ran track, and that friend was working for the athletic department. And we were at a party together, and we were catching up. She was asking me what I was up to, and told her about it. And she said, I work at the Wisconsin athletic department, and we give these things called vouchers out. And they're golden paper tickets, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And the dietitians, what they had to do was go out and find a restaurant. So let's just say Qdoba, and the owner would say, okay, and they'd go back, they'd print out a paper ticket that said this is worth $12. They'd have to find all the athletes and give them this paper ticket. They'd grab the ticket, they would take it to Qdoba. Qdoba would staple receipts to every paper ticket, and then the dietitian would pick up that packet. The athletic department would go through every one of those to make sure there wasn't a prohibited item, and then they would pay Qdoba.
Which sounds like a hot mess. It sounds like a lot.
Yes. But they were doing this every day or quite frequently. So they're feeding them, in many other ways. But once they were kind of out of season, this became sort of a method. So, we had this whole red card system set up. So she said, I'm going to get you a meeting with the head of dining services. So I said, all right, that sounds great. So we were really excited about this. So we're like, let's give this a shot. So, super prepared for this meeting, and went into his office and did the whole demonstration. And then there's just silence. And all my years of sales experience, like, don't fill in silence, wait till he speaks.
Yes.
It felt like a minute, it was, it felt like an eternity, but it was probably a minute. He finally looks at me and he says, I got to be honest with you. I took this meeting purely as a courtesy, but I actually think this could work. So he said, tell you
Your
what,
shot at the right time.
yeah. So he said, I'll give you all the team meals for April and May. Back at that time, as soon as school was out, you couldn't feed the athletes anymore. And this was still in the time of 2 snacks, 1 meal a day that you could provide. So April 1st, we had all the rosters, we had it all set up, we had the restaurant set up, and the athletes would go out and spend. And they had a card, a physical card. It was actually the year that Russell Wilson was here at Wisconsin. So it's kind of dates how far back that goes. And we would then go follow around, go to those restaurants. All the restaurants would put those receipts in an envelope. We would pick up all the envelopes. We would go through all the receipts. We would check if anything was not prohibited, let the university know about that, and pay out the restaurants and give a report to the athletic department as to who spent what. So we did that for about 75 team meals over that month and a half, and they loved it. So they said, let's start this up again in fall, because you couldn't really feed them. So again, in fall came up, and they would do it. It was a little bit less during like for football, they'd only use it on their day off. They wouldn't use it, during their regular days. So it changed kind of seasonality. But at the end of the school year, at that time, most teams were out of season, and you were kind of into the ends of track and field, that kind of stuff. So that's when it got a little bit heavier. So we kept doing that, and then here's Shabazz Napier, on national TV saying, "I go to bed hungry," and I knew the NCAA had been talking about prior to that, but shortly after that, they decided to deregulate food for athletes. So we had a bit of a history in a time where we knew a lot of the rules, we knew about the compliance behind it. So, like, I think this we could maybe expand this to other places. So shortly after that happened, Nebraska was the first school that called us because some of the ADs at Wisconsin left and went to Nebraska. And so then we set that up for them to do some weekend meals. And then Coach Bielema with Arkansas went down there with some ties over to Oregon State and just kind of kept growing. And we chased people around for receipts at every market that we went to. So we'd hire someone in the market. So one of my favorites is Tommy Jensen from Minnesota, the head dietitian. He worked for us back in the day when he was at Nebraska, and he used to go around. So we still didn't get receipts. So we still joke about that, you know, in his earliest days, he was picking up receipts from athletes.
Do you know Ryan Reist?
I do not.
Because he worked with Tommy, I think, at Nebraska for a period of time. So
Yeah.
I interned underneath him when he was at Mizzou for a little bit.
Okay.
And now he's in the tactical space, but
Yeah,
he mentioned Tommy on several occasions.
that's fun.
But it's funny. I like how you and another person who brought this up was like Anthony Zamora,
Mhm.
who's a chef RD with Utah Jazz, and he's just like, as a practitioner, if we can provide the best quality product and opportunities for the athletes and the coaching staff and the organization, all it takes is those people or one person now going to another organization that gets a head coaching job or a general manager job or something like that. And we did so well at our location that they're going to be like, we don't have this. We want this.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a domino effect. And, you know, if you have a high quality product and you're a high quality individual and, you know, you can provide that consistently,
Mhm.
it just becomes a really easy conversation amongst I mean, you know, it's a big world, but it's a small world at the same time. Everybody
Yeah.
knows somebody.
Yeah. So the problem with the early days is that one of my business partner, he was a former Packer, Mark Tauscher, um, played for the Packers and on the offensive line for Rodgers and Favre. And
Left right tackle, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he had a great Rolodex of athletic directors and people high up, but they all like said, "Yeah, we feed the athletes, and but I don't really know how." And they didn't really know the pain points that dietitians were facing. And at the time, there were even a lot of Power Fives didn't even have dietitians, and if they did have one, it was like one, maybe two. And you know, they were heavily in the food service business of providing food, and not as much about, you know, consulting as they should be. And so we quickly realized that we needed to kind of go from the bottom up. So we started talking to dietitians who were like, "Oh, let me tell you the pain points that we have." And so in 2016, we decided it was time to completely redevelop our system. We were using someone else's technology, so we built our own system, and that's what got us into kind of on path to today for it being a mobile payments app. You know, so that was kind of the genesis of the switch to technology that was much easier to work with for us.
So let's say I'm a practitioner who's never used Red Card before, or
Mhm.
I'm listening to this for the first time and like this is like something new to me. Um, Maybe very simplistically, could you explain like how it works? Like if I'm the practitioner, how does it work on the practitioner
Yeah.
side? Like if I'm the athlete and my dietitian's giving me X amount of funds I can go spend, like how does that work on the athlete side? So then I guess that way everyone can kind of understand like big picture, like how does this function?
Yeah. So when we start a school, we don't come in with a preset list of restaurants. We talk to dietitians, sometimes strength coaches, sometimes it's DFOs, to kind of depending on who in this day and age is generally dietitians. And we say, well, what restaurants do you want the athletes to actually eat at? So we're not just gonna come in and give you McDonald's. It's generally going to be, you know, 10 to 15 places that the athletes want to go to that the dietitian likes the food. So, you know, really the value proposition is zero waste. That's, you know, first and foremost. So the school only pays for what the athlete actually eats. So, you know, quickly go through the options for how you feed an athlete. You can send them back to the dorms and eat that food. They don't want to go. And a lot of schools that do that, you'll see 50 to 75% of those swipes go unused. And the dining services, the university generally doesn't give that money back. So you're out that money. Second option is you can cater food in. Well, it's a tremendous amount of time on the dietitian or DFO. There's a lot of waste. You get athletes come in and say, I didn't want that today. Walk out, don't eat it. So food waste,
Oh
you ask
yeah, been there
for.
many a times.
Yeah. Um, Then you can build your own dining hall. Great if you've got, millions of dollars to do that. But even once you build that, even today, the schools we work with and talk to, they have, it's $40 a head per meal. So, or you can give them red card where you've got, they're going to these certain restaurants and they're going to eat. We give you a full breakdown of what they ate because you can see the POS receipt. And then from there, we pay out all those restaurants. So we don't ever say that we don't try and pitch that we should be the only food source. We are for some schools, but certainly, or the largest food source for some schools. But for many of them, they do have dining halls. They do cater food in, and I think the more you mix it up for the athletes, the more all of it's appreciated. So I think you get better use out of food your budget if you're kind of using a bit of all of it and not just saying I'm just going to do one method or two methods.
Yeah, I think variety is essential. If you don't
Yeah,
have that, you're not providing them multiple options. The amount of flavor fatigue that happens, especially over a season, and
yeah,
especially how long some of these seasons are. If you're not mixing it up, then like you're gonna have guys and gals that are gonna stop eating meals, stop eating snacks, miss their fueling needs or the activity that they have, and like that's just a recipe to disaster when it comes to keeping them from not getting sick, keeping them from not getting hurt. The name of the game
yeah,
is availability. So if we can find multiple avenues that all fit within, like you said, the system, the financial means, why not use them
yeah,
if that's what's going to work in your environment? And I think the big thing you said, which is CFO, ops, teams, saving money or using your money smartly and appropriately and reducing
yeah,
food waste is the name of the game. And if you can show examples of other teams doing that, like for most places, that's a game changer. It's like well, this makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we be doing this if we can save X
yeah.
thousands of dollars by accurately figuring out how much everyone's spending on certain stuff?
And that's one of the new analytics that we just built, which shows you by team, by athlete, what percent of the funds they spent over, and you can look at it by meal. So you can pick a semester, a
Mhm.
quarter, a week, a day, one particular meal, and say how much is this being used. So you deep dive into the use of it all. And then you also could see athletes who don't use the items at the facility that the team provides. So over years, we built a check-in system. So you check in your dining hall with it, and then we have an ordering platform for your fueling stations. So between using Red Card, checking into your dining hall, and your fueling stations, if you're not a line item in each of those often enough, then as a dietitian, it kind of gives you a dive in like you're not using the resource we're providing you, then what are you doing? How are you fueling yourself? What are you doing to stay healthy? And the list of restaurants that generally schools have, if you're not going to those restaurants, either you're a fool and you're spending your own money, you could be spending the
But
athletic
you're
department's
wasting your
money.
money.
Yeah,
Someone's going to give you money. Why would it's like why wouldn't you use it? It seems
yeah,
crazy, but yeah, the athletes
yeah.
definitely. I don't know what they're thinking sometimes.
Well, and it's fascinating to me. Now in NIL, you're seeing there's some players that get NIL, and it's like all of a sudden they just disappear from our system. They're not using it at all.
I
And
guess I
then
just have so much money, like they just don't care at that point. It just isn't. It's a big deal to them because they know they have X amount coming in and they're going to be fine. So it's just kind of like, oh, it's whatever.
but it is heartwarming to me. Every now and then I'll take a look at particular athletes who I know who have massive NIL deals. And I was looking at one the other day, and their spend was 80 in the 80% range. It was like, hey, okay, smart, using the money, save your money. The athletic department is giving you this money. Why would you not use it? Because
That,
where are they going to go if they're not going to all these restaurants that they have access to?
yeah, I mean,
You
like
know,
in the last facility I was at, like we actually had a financial advisor, financial specialist from Wells Fargo
yeah,
come in. And again, we had athletes that were anywhere between 16 or 20 years old. And it's like, we need to be getting people in front of these age groups of these athletes who are making these NIL deals. So they're setting themselves up for success and not just blowing and spending all their money. Like you said,
mhm.
like if I'm getting $100 a week over an entire year, you multiply that out. Like that's a lot of money a university is
It's
investing in me to give me money to go eat. Now that's all the money I can invest or put somewhere else
Yeah.
that I'm not having to spend my own money. And it's like, logically that makes sense. But again, we're working with adolescents, teenagers, people from very low, poor economic backgrounds that now have all this money and want to get all the things that they've never had before they see other athletes get.
Yeah.
So it's really critical, like at these points in time, we get the right professionals in the right places to hopefully steer them in a direction that's going to be more appropriate.
Well, a lot of it too comes down to coach. Doesn't matter what your team on, but how much does your coach buy into your diet and what you're doing? And the schools that coaches watch it and say, I want you to spend all your money, they do. And I think it's a great use. And I think a lot of times their argument is, how can I go to bat for you to want more resources if you're not using the resources that the business office can very easily track that you're not using? I can't go ask for something else. You're not using this. But at the same time, coaches want to, coaches want to know that you're eating and, taking care of yourself. And sometimes the coaches and dietitians are at odds with the business office. The business office loves the low usage.
Oh, that's 100%. Wherever they can find some ways to cut stuff in the budget so
Yeah.
they can appropriate somewhere else, like they're going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But I love your data-driven approach. I think that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon.
No.
There's more and more sports analytics, sports science integration that's working with strength and nutrition and the sports medicine side. Again, it's all about check-ins, accountability, and you're putting these athletes now in positions where, you can't lie. Like, we're going to know if you're doing something or not. If you're not hitting your goals, well, here's all the data to show us like why you're not hitting your goals. Like, you're not showing up to this, you're not using your money, you're not eating appropriately. I used to call it literally my receipts. I go, I have my receipts in place. So if you come back or coach comes over or mom and dad has a question, like I can go into, my athlete management system and all my data, pull this up, and I can 100% show you, whether you're excelling and doing a great job hitting your goals or, hey, you're not putting weight on and you're injured all the time and your only availability is 50% of the time. Well, it makes sense with kind of the habits and behaviors you're putting into place.
Yeah. I think we try to be pretty sensible with the analytics we provide. Like we're getting into an age where it's like the analytics, I don't even know what they mean anymore. It's like you should go for it on fourth down when you're 40 yards away, and it's a 37.2% chance versus a 37.7%. It's like, at that point, come on, it's your gut feel of what do you think, how do you think the flow of the game's going, not what did ESPN say about what percent chance I have of making this. And so for us, food is emotional. Food ties into so many different things that we're just kind of giving you we'll give the professional the list of what they actually ate. It's up to you then to decide if it's right for them, and then or they didn't eat, or what their life choices were during those meals. So and I think from there, leave it to the dietitians and others that use their education and dig in a little bit further.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of our, working with sports scientists in the past, you can get data overloaded or just collect a whole bunch of stuff, but if you don't know what to do with all the stuff you collect, like it's just a big jumble of numbers. So, their advice was always like pick some, top 3, top 5 heavy hitter data points that you can explain, put in a graphical form that you can explain in like 1 or 2 sentences or visual representation that the coach and the athlete, or I don't know, maybe other dietitians you're working with that can understand. And if that gets your point across and that helps to change behavior, or that helps to get you resources and reinforcement, just stick to those. Like those are your bread and butter, your money makers. If you find something else that you could add or swap out, then do it. But you don't need to muddy the waters and have 70 different things, because a lot of times you have these conversations with these higher level individuals and they don't want to hear about 70 things that you're doing. Like, what's it going to cost me? What is it doing for us? And what is the results that we're getting out of it?
Yeah, I was talking to an athletic director one day and telling him about some of the athletic things we were looking at, and he's like, I think you should just go back to ropes and rock. That's all you really need. It's all this analytic stuff is it's just way too much. Just lift some weights and get in shape. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it falls back to just we complicate stuff too much, and it's just really simple. Athletics, you got to train with the nutrition, sleep. My big thing is sleep, hydration, and fueling. It's 40 to 60% of your day. If you struggle in any of those 3 areas, it's going to have a direct impact on your performance. performance. So if you
Yeah.
don't invest yourself in those areas, you're probably not going to perform well, or you're going to be at a high risk for getting hurt, getting sick. No one wants to do that because you're not available.
Well, and from a from a dietitian's perspective, obviously we work with hundreds of them, and you can be the best dietitian in the world, but if you don't have a relationship with that athlete, it's lost. And I give credit to a lot of dietitians that I talk to, like, look, I don't want to go on the road team. I don't want to travel a team, but it's a way to make and get into these relationships where I can get through to these people who came from much different, tougher backgrounds than I'm from. And I made a change in a young, man or woman's life because they trusted me and believed in me, and then we could get through with, our education and being a dietitian. Those are the great stories.
They want to see you. They want to see that you're there with them through the thick and the thin. And they want you to follow up on what you promised you're going to tell them, because too many times these athletes, especially the ones that come from really challenging backgrounds, have been lied to, been told promises, stuff doesn't, come out on the side that people say that they're going to do. So if you can just do some simple stuff like that and like follow through and like hold them accountable, but like be honest and be real and build that trusted relationship, night and day difference. And especially if that's a key member of your team, that speaks volumes to the rest of the team, then it's kind of a domino effect. Then you're having the athletes or the coaches talk for you, and you're not having to do all the talking for yourself.
Yeah. Spot
on. So you mentioned a little bit like about the food service. So when I went to University of Georgia, if I remember correctly, so like, do you guys then like, does a dietitian work with the chef, or you work with the chef and you put the menu on there, they order it, and then it goes to the chef? Like, how does that work?
So the ordering system that we have is really food service driven. It's a very easy, it doesn't give you a ton of analytics, but it's a very easy thing. It's a very easy way to run a kitchen. And that's the perspective we guys came from, is make it easy for the athletes to order something, make it easy for the chefs and others to get the menu in there. Because you get, we looked into doing a more deeper dive into something like an oatmeal, and you can have best laid plans, and the food service provider cuts the lasagna in the wrong size, and there goes your
there goes the calorie and all the stuff you have in there.
So we don't really focus on that stuff. We just focus, the ordering system really focused on food and fueling stations, and specifically around stopping the lines from pre-made smoothies, grab and go stuff, for team travel, getting little bags together, goodie bags of food for them together. Just things that were a quick, easy order that really saved time for the athletes and for the providers of the food, which could have been in some cases your performance chef, but it's also just maybe the young man or woman who works behind the smoothie counter and sees the line out the door of people who want a smoothie. So that's where a lot of the ordering stuff came from.
Yeah, we can be more streamlined and efficient. And, if you can give a dietitian back an hour or 2 hours of their day that they can allocate to maybe helping somebody or educating them versus, like you said a couple of different times, just doing the food service part.
Yeah.
And I think more dietitians are getting to that point. If we can have more resources like this where we can cut off or cut down on the amount of time we spend on food service, there's so much other things that we can provide to a program that's not just handing you an Uncrustable and a snack bag and a box of food. If we can delegate that to the appropriate individuals or hire the appropriate staff that can learn about that and how to do that, there's 1,000 other things that we could do that's going to make a lot bigger difference for the program.
Well, and I like to joke with the business office when I'm sitting with them, when we do these school visits, and I say, you're I didn't know you needed an advanced degree to lug Gatorade, I know you're sitting here, you want to save money, you might want to hire people with a little bit lesser degrees to hump things around the facilities, and it's changing, to some extent, obviously depending on how much your institution buys into food service, but it's good to see that dietitians can help in being true practitioners instead of food service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. I guess overarching, looking at it big picture, what would you say is your top 3 things? Like let's say I'm an athletic director or a CFO, and you were like, hey, this is a good option for you. Like, what would you tell them? Like how this can make a difference in their organization? Because I think a lot of times, like as practitioners, as a dietitian, it has to go to that seat of the table to have those
Okay.
conversations. I think that's a challenging thing that we don't learn in school
Hmm.
until we either get a really good mentor or a really good person to be able to teach us these kind of skills. But I think it'd be definitely helpful on like figuring out for us how to navigate through how to have those conversations to be able to, I don't
Yeah.
want to say sell, but say this is going to be a good thing for our program.
Well, fortunately nowadays you can pretty much say your competitive team is using it, so we should use it too. So there's always that.
The arms
And
race.
and it's such an incestuous business that it's most likely there's a few people in every athletic department now have come from a school that works with us. But first and foremost, if you're talking to if you're in the ivory halls of the athletic director's office, at that point, it's a lot about efficiencies and saving food costs. And so not only are you going to save food costs, you're going to save staff time. So those are really two big drivers, and also running a more efficient operation. Some people get so caught up in we provide them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm like, okay, well, how many chefs are you bringing in now for breakfast and lunch and dinner? You started breakfast at 6 a.m. They were there prepping prior to that. Your dinner had to go until 8 p.m. Plus. And generally the athletes will probably like the first chef, but the second chef, and they kind of get to know. And are you really going to put people back into that place, 3 times a day? So the athletes don't necessarily want that. But B, if you just say, hey, we're going to cut out dinner and we're going to put that on a red card, you can get rid of potentially a whole other shift. You can run a breakfast and lunch shift just with one crew and be done with it. Makes it a lot easier on that food provider. And unfortunately, you've got a lot of competing forces in athletic department, athletic directors' ears about how they should be fed. You've got your Sodexos, Airmarks, Levy's, all provide a great service. Funny thing is in one place they love Sodexo, the next place they hate them, the next place they love Airmark, the next place they hate them. But
It's a 50-50. You don't know.
yeah, but those are complicated contracts and complicated things that those companies don't want to feed every single team meal, because it comes down to you can't do this efficiently. So oftentimes you see in those contracts, they take care of the big things. They wanted, stadium vending. They wanted, the team meals that are easier, but then they're trying to look for some team meals, and they kind of do that because they wanted the rest of the contract. And then it's not that, it's not a very good thing for them. And
The
then the quality
quality or
starts
the
going down.
options or like what you can give them is just like the athletes are like, I don't want this. And you're just like,
Yeah.
throwing something together that's not either of the quality or what the players actually really want. I mean, that's why a lot of times, like especially the last place I was at, like I was sending out surveys and polling players and doing QR codes. Y'all tell us what you want.
Hmm.
I'm going to surround you with good quality options, the fruits, the vegetables, right? Good quality options. Ultimately, you're going to make whatever choice that you're going to want to make.
Yep.
But if I can at least foster your environment with some better choices, and I took your guys' opinion and advice and recommendations, and I
Yeah.
can work that in with the chef or work that in with an option like this, those guys are going to be so much more appreciative because they've been heard. And you threw in barbecue once a week, or you threw
Yeah.
in, maybe we don't do fried wings, but we do smoked wings that has sauces. And so it's like, if you just, actually take some of the feedback from the athletes and show them that you're actually doing something with it, that just goes a really long way.
Yeah. So after the efficiency and the business model behind it and why it makes financial sense for them, and the savings they're real. They're pretty massive. I mean,
Yeah.
when we took over one school, they were catering. We saved them $2,500 per catered meal for football. We get and multiply that out times every catered meal they're doing, which was daily. And then you take in the staff time. It's really extensive. Um, so I think the other biggest thing then, depending on which athletic director you're talking to, is this is an opportunity for the athletes to make their own choice, to do something on their own time without you telling them what to do, where to do it, where to be, how to be, someone breathing, down their neck about what does your plate look like? What are you doing? It's,
They
what?
don't want it. They don't want food police. They don't want people over their shoulders. Like just because sometimes when they go to eat, and this is why like I am not a food police and I was never a food police. They don't want someone over, like, that's their time. Like, they probably had
Yeah.
gone to academics, they had practice, they had film. They're just around coaches and people like you said, telling them what to do 24/7. The last thing they want to hear is a 30-minute to a 45-minute time frame where they can just sit with their athlete or sit with their other friends, sit with other athletes, take a break, just relax. The last thing is they want another person
Yeah.
coming at them that was already somebody that was coming at them for the last 4 hours. Like, they just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. Eating's emotional. They want to do it on their time, and but in the end, we do show you a receipt of what exactly they had, so you do get to police them next time they come
Yeah,
back
yep.
into the facility. So they just may not feel like that at the moment. So
And I can definitely, I've definitely seen a trend the last couple of years at the place I was at. And the goal was to try to eventually work towards kind of that model. It's just when it gets to dinner time and practice is over, they don't want anything to do with being at that facility. Like, they want to
yep,
go home, they want to go to their apartment. They don't want to
yep,
stay any longer than they have to. Breakfast and lunch, 100% for sure. You can lock them in and get them in there, just
yep,
because of how academics, schedule, practice, film, rehab, all that stuff kind of works. But once that's over, like, if they got to take 2 extra steps this way to go do this, nope. I'd rather go sit on my couch, have my food,
yep,
watch my TV or play video games, and not have to do anything else.
yeah. That's the truth.
um, you mentioned AI earlier? Are you guys getting into anything with AI? You're integrating that into your model at all, or see that playing a factor in what you guys do?
We look at it as playing into our model a little bit, just for some of the background auditing and checking on certain things. Um, so I think we can make internal practices much easier via AI. I think AI will have a big play in the future, but I think there's some challenges there, right? So first off, you've got to have dietitians still overlook that stuff. There's licensing guard practitioners, so it's not like you can just start
Yeah.
providing a bunch of food advice, AI generated and pass certain state laws by doing that. So there's some concern there, but yeah, I mean, I think that would we someday maybe build a model to help with dietitians? That maybe, but it's got to be dietitian driven. It's got to be licensed practitioner driven, have a good product that helps. Um, but at the end of the day, AI is not going to replace the relationship, and you can give them do the easiest meal planning, scripting for them. But again, if you didn't take time to build that relationship, then are they really going to do it? And so,
And I think a lot of times too is you can't replace teaching somebody how to apply it. Like, yeah, AI can give you all this information and
yeah,
examples and write you up a meal plan, but it's the interaction and the conversations about, oh, well, what does your schedule look like? What does your routine look like? Where's your
yeah,
training at? Like, maybe, in my case, at the place I'm at right now, working in the tactical sense, family and children, and you may be, flying in the morning or flying in the afternoon or flying at nighttime. It's like
yeah,
there's just constant change. And, for a computer system to be able to pick up on those changes or emotional changes or stress changes, um,
yeah,
I don't know if a computer, I mean, who knows, but for a computer to do all that versus a person picking that up and being able to provide practical suggestions and recommendations in real time, like, that's a hard thing to, match and replicate.
yeah. I think the AI will play a big role in places that are underserved by dietitians or schools that necessarily can't necessarily afford it.
Yeah.
However, a lot of the universities that we work with and professional organizations, it should never be maybe it's a tool that the dietitian uses to make their life a little bit easier, but it should never be in the replacement of a dietitian.
Yeah. I agree there. What would you say is in store for Red Card? Anything new coming around the corner, or anything you guys are currently doing right now that maybe people really aren't aware about?
I'd love to say we're releasing a new album, but we're not wrong field. Right now we're working, a lot of our time is spent on integrations and staying up on technology, trying to get POS integrations. So we always want to make the athlete experience even better and better. and smoother, and then make the experience for our merchants, our restaurants better and smoother. So trying to kind of pick and choose which technologies to run, what paths to run down, um, is tricky. And the big area that we've gotten into in the last year is right in the app now, you can also have a MasterCard or a Visa card that same kind of scheduling system. So can put money right into an athlete's hand in real time. And so when they're traveling, you can give them food money, gate it a little bit or not gate it so they can take care of their food on the road.
Does that have like almost kind of like an Apple Pay where you can just scan it with your phone, or do they gotta like QR code scan something? Like, how does that work?
No, it's a full-on MasterCard. So the card, you can do a physical card, but 18 to 22-year-olds are really good at losing physical cards.
Oh,
So
they couldn't keep anything if their life depended on
yeah, they
it.
never get older and more responsible, you know. So our method is we have the MasterCard is sent right into your phones, into the Redcard app. And then from
Perfect.
there you enter the numbers and put it into your phone's wallet, and then you spend it with Apple Pay or the Google Pay or any other method that your phone has.
I
So
think the biggest plus you said multiple different times is as a company, you're at least transitioning with the change that are occurring.
yeah.
Um, the funny thing, there was this YouTube series called Bankrupt that like me and my fiance have been watching, and it
Hmm.
talks about all these major box stores, organizations, places that have gone bankrupt, and like just the common theme across the board is even some of these places that had been around 75, 100 years is either get too big too fast, or they just don't forecast or want to change with the new things that are coming around the corner to be
Yeah.
able to adapt to what people are going to be doing or currently doing, and then they just dump over on the other side and end up failing. So
Yeah.
it's good to see you guys are taking a lot of those concepts, taking a lot of the feedback from practitioners, and directly applying that into your service and your product, because if you don't, like, that's where you're never going to be able to stay on top of the mountain.
Yeah, and then there's the business model itself, and I'm always nervous about change in terms of what's going on with the NCAA, and oddly it was change that allowed us to really have a foothold and do stuff here. And every time there's been a change, it's only been beneficial for us. But it seems like some really big change is going to be coming, and I've got to think that at some point here, there's just no regulation on food whatsoever, and
The wild, wild west.
it'll be the Wild West. But I still think that for us, you're still going to want to. There's still 18, 22-year-olds that you're working with, and you're still going to want to know what they're eating. You're trying to teach them. You're trying to take care of them, and so we'll hold a really good spot in that. And the way we do it, we can do it cost effectively. You get into some of the other ordering services, and you start putting all the fees that they tack on. Those numbers start adding up in a real hurry, and kind of rewarding laziness too. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, if you have opportunities in the chef RD profession is growing, um, you know, being able to have those individuals, kitchens, teaching them how to cook for themselves, giving them those skills is paramount.
yeah,
If someone doesn't know how to cook for themselves, then yeah, like that is going to be their lifestyle is ordering out. So, and like that has a place, but like if you know how to cook for yourself long term, not only you're teaching your family, you're teaching your kids, you're teaching other people around you. Um, and I think we can continue to keep supporting, especially those chef RDs or just chefs in general, to be part of those organizations.
yeah.
That's definitely a lost art that I think a lot of people need to learn how to do. Just basic cooking skills.
Oh, 100%. And there's a lot of things. We always talk about, should we get into consulting for schools, and yes or no. And I don't really want to be a consultant, but we know a lot from what we see and what we do, and what the athletes get and how to do
We've
it.
been
And
around the grapevine.
yeah. And there's definitely a lot of things that I would change if I was feeding athletes at a given school, what I would do, and and make it different. And sometimes universities are really held by sort of old school beliefs, and change is hard. And the tough part is an athletic director at some level has to put a lot on the line to try and get something built or something done. and then try and get them to move away from that, even when the athletes don't love that, it's really hard.
Yeah, and nowadays they don't give people time. It doesn't matter if it's an athletic director, if it's a coach, if it's a GM. It's like if you're not successful or you're not
Yeah.
appropriately utilizing your resources in the way that you need to, it's just like year you're gone, 2 years you're gone. There's not this, like Bill Belichick who just retired. You're only seeing people in
Yeah.
places for 20, 25, 30 years anymore, unless they have a really good culture and a really good system in place that's allowing a multitude of their teams to flourish and do that. But yeah, you don't see it too much
Yeah.
anymore.
One of the more vocal arguments we get in internally and at times is just where dietitians fit into that model. And I respect that the coaches have given dietitians a lot more opportunities, and it's increased the size of the number of dietitians who have opportunities out there. But at the same time, you don't have your orthopedics and your doctors and everyone else following coach from one team to the next. And let's pray to God that isn't where things go. But you really want to give the dietitians get out of that noise, be part of the medical model, be part of the healthcare system that's providing health for the athletes. And you say to a coach, hey, this is our dietitian team that's here. This is the group that we believe in, and stay here, build over time, do the right things, and give time. And, as opposed to a new coach comes in, new dietitian crew comes in. That
Yeah,
coach leaves, the next one comes in. It's like, how do you build food service operations and what you want to do and plan? Because as much as it is being a dietitian talking about food and the relationships, yeah, there is facilities that have to go around that you need to weigh in on, and that takes time to build. If you keep changing those people out, it makes it pretty tough.
yeah, it's like your athletes are never going to truly be happy. Or nowadays, since the transfer portal is literally free agency, like,
It's
yeah, you're
worse.
you're showing all these flashy things and options and items, but if you don't have the practitioners that know how to utilize them or know how to like efficiently run those systems or run those toys, if you want to call it, then they're not ever going to really get used to their maximum ability, and you're just buying stuff to flash it and then just sitting
Yeah,
there.
I mean, it doesn't matter. You see great dietitians kind of, get moved out when coach gets out. And you granted, you see a great one, come and fill their role, but it takes you a long time to get your feet under you to understand which way the wind blows at that university and what the ADs think and feel,
Yeah.
and trying to get that food service set up to produce this winning team. It's a lot to ask.
It could take months to a year sometimes. Like you got to there's just so many conversations, relationships, and people you have to talk to even know how to even do your job at a high level. And sometimes you get in there, like the first couple months is like I'm just asking questions and observing because like I've
Yeah.
never been here before. I don't know how stuff's being run. I got to figure out how to delegate and have other people do these tasks that maybe I haven't had to do before. And you can't just go in there, and I think that's where it's a challenge for sometimes for dietitians. Like, you can't go in there and just change everything overnight. Like
No.
you got like, what are my two or three big things that are going to make the biggest impact, the fastest, that are going to be able to have people see that I am of value, and what are the things that I can finish and accomplish in 6 months and a year, and just progress on those over time. Because if you think you're going to go and change the world in a month or change everyone's thought process and ideas, there's just way too many personalities with different
Right.
backgrounds and experiences to be able to do that.
Yeah, I always appreciate when you see the dietitians who get to stay with schools and kind of have that longer term purview. And that's not great to see some fresh blood and people moving around, but you don't want to be the complete wild west where every coach moves the dietitians with them and gets new staff, and the other staff goes out, and you start hurting all
It's,
the players then.
and it's just tough for them and their families, like wives,
Yeah.
kids, husbands, whoever it is. Like, even ourselves, like we got to the point now where just like we transitioned, into the tactical space because we're just tired of moving. Like we've been in, I don't know,
You're not the first who said that and done that.
5 to 7 places in the last 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And like you want to start a family and you don't want to work 90 hours a week. It's just like that gets like you could be loving what you're doing, you love the staff, you love the players, but to have a lifestyle and to be able to like be there for your kids,
Yeah.
it's just not sustainable like for long periods of time.
it's one of the things I think is tough about athletics is, the coaches get paid quite handsomely, and they can they can do that. And even position coaches these days get paid well. But I look at your directors of football operations and dietitians, and while there's a very large pay scale amongst that, but you don't get to see a lot of people who really can stick out into that career for the entirety of their career. And a lot of it is you either have to give up everything on the home front, or you have to you have a spouse who's willing to give up everything. And I think that's a tough situation. I think you want to try, and I would like to see the NCAA and the conferences, the schools build a spot where dietitians, DFOs, and all of them can, hey, this could be life I can settle into and have a family and um
Because if you have more stress at home because you're so worried that you don't know if you're going to have a job, then
yeah
how are you supposed to provide a high level of service at work every day when maybe the money's not enough? Like, because again,
Mhm.
we know there's positions that are getting paid very minimal and you're working 60, 90 hours a week. So you're stressed
yeah
about money, you're stressed about you're never home, you're never with your family, you're missing stuff. And like, that's just all going to compound over time. And, you may be doing a great job even though you're really stressed, but like, that's going to drive you out. It's just not going to be sustainable. And
you're gonna end
we've
up
seen
in
it time and time
tactical. You're gonna end
again.
up in tactical.
Hey, tactical's big right now. There's jobs open. It is pretty nice. Shout out to, so I'm part of shipping, and we're gonna have a symposium in March, and we
Mhm.
actually have a segment that's going to be on one of our days that's going to talk about dietitians in the trenches. Like, what can you do after being like 10 plus years in as a dietitian? Like, what are other routes you can essentially transition or go into if you're kind of at that like tipping point where, maybe athletics or just, certain levels of athletics is just too much
Yeah.
for you. There's just all these different spots that are developing and opening up now where you can have a more normal lifestyle, make a really good compensation, and still do what we all want to do, which is at the
Yeah.
end of the day, be able to help people and get them better.
Well, there's a certain dietitian who found that out, who used to be at Baylor, who now works for Red Card, and she found some work-life balance, and she's been great for us, and gets to keep her finger on the pulse of things. So,
Yeah.
but she didn't leave for burnout reasons. She left for loving her husband's job, and um, just treats to have her own staff and have people who were in the trenches, and it helps us with Red Card to service people too. And
And that's a
when
trend I'm seeing. I'm seeing more dietitians going over to supplement companies, food
yeah
companies, nutraceuticals. Um, Again, just for a lot of those different reasons right there. And it provides those companies, when a practitioner is now talking to the company, you
yeah
have someone you could talk to that's relatable,
hmm
that understands what you've gone through and probably did it themselves. And having that kind of connection makes a big difference. So
yeah.
last thing I want to ask you before we finish up. So obviously you do a lot of fast food, a lot of restaurants. If you could give me one fast food or restaurant that you would order on Red Card, what would it be?
One fast food or restaurant, like a national chain, like the broadest of chains, or
Yes. Yes. Yep.
oh man, it's funny you say this because you get tarnished as you work with some of these places, and you're like, I love their food, but on a business scale, they're so horrible to work with. I can't order their food and get it. I can't emotionally do that. Boy, oh boy, you got to give me a quick second to think here about
Yep.
the
There's just so many options.
there are so many options, and there just are the variety of um I'd say that smaller there's a smaller chain in the Midwest called Forage Kitchen that I absolutely love, and they're kind of in the same vein as Sweet Green and
Okay.
and
I know
Kava.
Sweet Greens from Atlanta and Kava from Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah. And this group's working on the expansion. They're obviously in Madison here, and uh Champaign, Urbana, and some other college towns, and I love that kind of food. Thai food, also I'm a huge Thai food fan. Um a lot of places there's, specific menu items that I like at, one place or another, but I'm kind of a big bowl person, so that's
When you
where.
just throw everything all in one, it just makes life so much easier, and the flavors get to mix.
But sometimes, the bowl you eat for flavor, sometimes you eat just for nutritional value, right? And it's
Yep.
easy to just throw it all in a bowl and just eat it and go from there. So
Quick, simple, and efficient, like we all love.
exactly the one dish meal, where it's just this thing right here, and then it gets rid of the debate of, is it a snack or is it a meal? Because it's a bowl, it's a fork, it's got to be a meal. It can't be a handheld. So,
Yeah, well, fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on. Anyone that wants to contact Jeff, we'll put his contact information or any social media handles down in the bio. My information will be down there as well. If you want to listen to any more of the 60 plus episodes on the Roots podcast, you'll be able to do that by clicking the link below. If you're looking for someone to help you fuel and meet your needs and meet your fueling goals, I obviously have a private practice and services on the side now that I'm able to